Donald Trump just signed an executive order establishing a sovereign wealth fund. Will the federal government start building a pile of treasure and Bitcoin to match up against its $36 trillion mountain of debt? So a sovereign wealth fund is a government-run investment fund that can hold stocks, bonds, and other assets like real estate and, yes, Bitcoin. There are hundreds of these worldwide, including about 1 in 4 countries and half of U.S. states. The biggest are oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Norway, where they set aside a hunk of oil revenue. East Asian exporters also have them stashing excess dollars since they export much more to the U.S. than they import, so they have a bunch of leftover dollars. Some of these funds are very big, so Norway's sovereign wealth fund has $1.7 trillion, which is about 7 times Norway's national debt and comes to almost $700,000 per household in Norway. Gulf Arab countries have a bunch of funds totaling nearly $5 trillion. China's funds hold about $2.8 trillion, while tiny Singapore has $2.1 trillion, which includes Social Security funds, which Singapore does not piss away the way we do here in America. Hong Kong, Korea, Malaysia, even Australia all have sovereign wealth funds. As for U.S. states, 23 states have some form of sovereign wealth fund holding a total of $300 billion in assets. The biggest is Alaska, which salts away some of its oil revenue and hands out a check every year to Alaskans. Called the Alaska Permanent Fund, it has over $72 billion, which is almost $300,000 per household in Alaska. Every year it sends out several $1,000s to Alaska, which is a drop in the bucket, but it helps with the famously high cost of living. Now, most other states also fund their sovereign wealth funds with oil and mineral rights like Texas, Wyoming, or North Dakota. A few are funded by tobacco settlement or unclaimed properties. Of course, a federal fund would dwarf all of these, given that Washington is already sitting on nearly $6 trillion in assets. That's nothing compared to its $36 trillion debt, but it would still make it by far the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world overnight. These assets include cash deliverables, about $1.2 trillion in buildings and structures, most of it empty since federal workers don't actually come to the office, and student loans worth nearly $2 trillion. That would be the ones Biden has not canceled to buy votes. Into this giant pot, Trump is floating to pour tariff revenue, and he even suggested the federal government take a share of TikTok in return for letting it operate in the U.S. That could be a pattern for other foreign companies, especially Chinese. Give the feds a share, and you can operate. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. Trump's sovereign wealth fund will probably happen, and soon. Depending what assets it buys, it could quickly turn a profit. Trump's already promised a Bitcoin reserve, and stakes in TikTok or other companies might give taxpayers some juicy returns while converting federal assets from a $6 trillion graveyard to a way to reduce the cost of the federal government. Still, Trump will not be president forever. This does risk building a $6 trillion slush fund that's liable to future corruption and mismanagement, given governments are famously bad and corrupt at managing money. In which case, why not just pawn the assets and reduce the national debt? So if a sovereign fund is a step to that, it is a winner. If not, there's a lot that could go wrong. Read the rest with charts and all the gory details at ProfSaintAnge.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.